Did your family receive an EFC, the number that you get from FAFSA, or the SAI, Student Aid Index, that seems just unrealistically high? Or maybe you realized after submitting FAFSA that you made an error. No matter what the reason is, if you have to make a correction for FAFSA, I'm going to explain how to do that in today's video. I'm also going to talk about situations where you don't want to actually correct the FAFSA, but you want to instead submit an appeal, which is different. Hey there, my name is Jocelyn Pearson, founder of the Scholarship System, where we redefine paying for college to help families build strong financial futures instead of ones where they are buried in student loan debt. Now, one of the first lines of defense when it comes to paying for college is submitting FAFSA. This is a huge step in the right direction, and we tell all of our families to do so. So we want to make sure that this powerful tool is done correctly. Now, make sure you hit subscribe because every week I'm releasing a new strategy on paying for college beyond FAFSA. So again, you're going to want all of those strategies because we want all of them to come together to a debt-free ride, right? Mistakes happen. Making a mistake on your FAFSA, it's not the end of the world. I know it's scary and stressful for us, but in the end, this is just going to happen, especially with so many families doing it so often. Submitting FAFSA is something that your family has to do every single year while they're in college, so you'll get a lot of practice and you'll probably see a lot of opportunity for error as well. Now, if you don't catch an error, it could cost your student thousands of dollars on financial aid, so we do want to make sure that we fix any mistakes. We have an entire FAFSA playlist on our YouTube channel. If you want to check that out, we'll link to it in the description, or maybe it's popping up somewhere around here, but I talk about a lot of different tips with FAFSA, including the most important mistakes to avoid so that your student can get the Pell Grant or any kind of other money through FAFSA. Okay, so how do we begin with making sure that we don't have errors, or how do we find the errors that we know we submitted? First and foremost, we want to download our SAR, our Student Aid Report. This is a download of all of the information that's submitted, including the results. Now, how do you view your SAR letter? You just log into your FAFSA website, go to My FAFSA page, and then there's a button that should say View SAR, Student Aid Report. If you provided an email address, you also should have received an email from noreply@fafsa.gov with a link directly to this report as well. So multiple places that you can find it. So once you find that report, take the time to go through each line. Sometimes it's easier if you print it out. It's just different than when you're submitting it. So it might be easier just to look at it now and comb through each number. If you find a mistake, don't panic. Changing a mistake can be pretty easy. Also, maybe it has no consequences. Or on the other hand, maybe, like I mentioned earlier, it could have cost your student a lot of money if you didn't fix it. So maybe you overstated money, a balance in something, and so it could possibly make it look like you have more than you actually do. So in that case, we really need to make sure that we fix it. But that said, there's ways to fix mistakes, so don't panic. Now, before I explain what to do when you find that mistake, I do want to say that no matter what your student receives from FAFSA, whether they get money or not, scholarships are always something that students should do as well. This is a great complement to the money that you receive through FAFSA, but also students that don't get anything through FAFSA can get scholarships. So if you're interested in that, make sure that you register for my free training. You can find the link in the description, or you can go to thescholarshipsystem.com/free webinar. This is where I explain my 6 steps to securing scholarships, including how I got 6 figures and paid to go to college and graduated debt free. So make sure you check out that free training no matter what you're doing. If you're submitting FAFSA, your student should also be submitting scholarship applications. Okay, so first and foremost, if you find a mistake, you can absolutely call the school and make a correction. So if your student already submitted their admissions application, reach out to the financial aid department, the bursar's office, and submit a official change of that. They might have a different process depending on the school, but notify them that you found an error and that you need to make a change. You can also make a edit on the paper SAR and submit it that way. Or you can actually do it yourself. You can log in. This is typically the best process, but again, always notify the school just in case. Now, doing it yourself online is actually pretty easy. You just log into the FAFSA website with your FAFSA ID, your FSA ID, and once you log in from My FAFSA page, you can click a button that says Make Corrections. So again, they know this is going to happen. They've made it pretty simple. So then you want to just resubmit the form. Now, a few things to keep in mind. First, every time you submit a correction, your FAFSA is possibly going to be submitted for reviews, for manual review. So they're going to go through it with a fine-tooth comb. Now, this isn't the worst thing. It could be kind of a pain in the butt though, and actually a third of people are selected for this randomly anyway. But that said, each submission does open you up for that verification process. Comment below, have you and your student gone through that verification process? Were you one of the people that were picked for that? Let me know in the comments below, and also share with us how it went. Was it smooth? Was it easy? Or did it take forever? Let us know. Okay, now let's talk about specific errors. First, if you realize that the social security number was wrong on FAFSA, in this case, FAFSA actually recommends just submitting a new form with the correct social security number. This does change the processing date of the FAFSA, so make sure that you contact the school again in this situation as well. Second, a situation where we can't really submit it as a change is if a balance changes. So when it comes to FAFSA, we are submitting balances based on the day that we are submitting. So this is actually a strategy we talk about in our debt-free degree lab about how we can properly handle funds in order to minimize our balances on FAFSA and therefore increase our chances of receiving money. But that said, and by the way, you can learn more about debt-free degree lab in the description at the link. But that said, if your balance has changed since submitting it, this is not something where you'd submit a correction. If unexpected circumstance is the cause of that, you could possibly submit an appeal. So that is a completely separate process. In fact, I have an entire video on the appeal process, so make sure you check that out. Third, some data cannot really be changed. For example, if you use the data retrieval tool and it pulled tax information, this is set by that tool. Now, in some cases, maybe you submitted an amended tax return. If that's the case, then you definitely want to let the school know. So check out that information that was automatically retrieved. Typically, this data retrieval tool will minimize the opportunity for mistakes because it's just going to pull the data. But sometimes maybe you made changes and it didn't catch those. So again, make sure that you are contacting the school. Now, before we wrap up, I already mentioned one instance where we'd want to submit an appeal versus an edit to FAFSA. But just to quickly recap that and differentiate it, when we're talking about making corrections with FAFSA and correcting mistakes, this is talking about numbers that are mistyped or social security numbers that are mistyped, information that is mistyped or incorrectly entered, not situations that have changed. So if you're trying to change the FAFSA because maybe this year you only made $50,000 less than you did of the year that it's using, that is not something that we're changing. That is something that we are trying to show the school in an appeal. So again, I have a whole separate video on that appeals process, but if your family is making way less, they were hit with big medical bills, all the different reasons for an appeal process, that is an appeal. That is not resubmitting FAFSA. So we just want to make sure that you don't get yourself in a pickle by trying to submit a change when really it should be handled as an appeal. Okay, so that said, you have very specific steps when it comes to editing FAFSA and correcting any kind of mistakes. Again, make sure that you hit subscribe because regardless of FAFSA results, there are so many strategies out there that can help your student graduate from college debt-free or at least minimize the debt that they have to take on. So again, hit subscribe because every week there's a new strategy. And then don't forget that free training I talked about because every student that is submitting FAFSA needs to be submitting scholarships. It's just if it's the time frame of submitting FAFSA, it's a time frame for scholarships. So make sure you and your student get on that and check out that free training. Again, it's linked in the description. All of the amazing resources are linked in the description. So that said, while making changes to FAFSA is not hard, the best action is really to make sure that you're communicating with that school, communicating with the financial aid department, and making sure that they're in the loop anytime that you need to make any kind of corrections or appeals. But we want to make sure that we are submitting accurate information the first time if we can, but again, errors will always happen, especially when there are just so many different data points that we're pulling. So now you have the tools in order to correct those mistakes. All right, this is Jocelyn with the Scholarship System. I'll see you in the next video.